My brother's fiancée mocked me as intellectually broke. Dad laughed. 3 days later, they begged my company for a bailout, only to find me, their secret CEO, holding their fate. The turkey was dry. That was the first thing I noticed. But nobody else seemed to mind because they were too busy chewing on my dignity. I sat at the far end of the long mahogany table in my parents' dining room. It was Thanksgiving, the one time of year I felt obligated to return to the house that never felt like a home. The crystal chandelier sparkled above us, casting a warm glow on the silverware, but the air down at my end of the table was freezing. My mother, Eleanor, was fluttering around my younger brother, Lucas. She was piling more stuffing onto his plate like he was a starving refugee, not a 30-year-old man wearing a Rolex that cost more than my first car. "Eat up, Lucas," Mom cooed, her voice dripping with that sugary affection I hadn't tasted in decades. "You need your strength. Running a company is exhausting work." Running. That was a generous word for what Lucas did. Driving it into the ground was more accurate. My father, Robert, sat at the head of the table, swirling his red wine. He looked at Lucas with a pride that bordered on blindness. "Your mother is right, son. The deal you're working on with Orion Tech, that's going to be the legacy of Mercer Holdings. Big things ahead." I kept my head down, slicing my dry turkey. I was wearing a simple gray sweater and jeans. Comfortable, practical. To them, it looked like surrender. Next to Lucas sat Bella, his new fiancée. This was her official introduction to the extended family. She was beautiful in a sharp, manufactured way. High cheekbones, eyes that scanned the room calculating the value of everything they landed on. When her eyes landed on me, the calculation came up 0. "So," Bella said, her voice cutting through the clinking of silverware. She didn't address me by name. She just pointed her fork in my direction. "Lucas tells me you're in computers?" I looked up. "Software," I corrected gently. "I work in software development." Lucas let out a short, sharp laugh. He reached over and squeezed Bella's hand. "He fixes bugs, babe. You know, like when your laptop freezes and you have to call the guy to tell you to turn it off and on again. That's William." The table erupted in polite, condescending chuckles. My cousin Todd, sitting across from me, smirked. "Hey, Will, my printer is acting up. Maybe you can take a look after dessert." I felt my jaw tighten. I took a sip of water to wash down the urge to scream. "Actually, I specialize in back-end architecture and security protocols. It's a bit more complex than printers." Bella tilted her head, looking at me like I was a puppy that had just failed a simple trick. "Oh, bless your heart," she said. The sympathy in her tone was fake, but the venom underneath was very real. "I mean, isn't it a little cute? How you pretend it's complicated." The room went quiet, but it wasn't the silence of awkwardness. It was the silence of anticipation. They were waiting for the punchline. "Excuse me?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Bella took a sip of her wine, leaving a red stain on the glass. "Well, Lucas is out here making million-dollar deals. He's building an empire, and you're just typing. It's like you're intellectually broke." Intellectually broke. The words hung in the air. I looked at my brother. I waited for him to defend me, to say, "Hey, that's my brother, ease up." Instead, Lucas grinned. "Babe, you have no filter. But honestly, Will, she has a point. You've always been the slow one. Safe. Boring. No ambition." I looked at my mother. She was busy wiping a speck of sauce from Lucas's chin. She didn't even look at me. I looked at my father, the patriarch, the man who taught me to tie my shoes and ride a bike. "Dad," I said softly. Robert Mercer sighed, putting his glass down loud enough to rattle the china. He looked at me with pure exhaustion. "William, don't be so sensitive. It's a joke. Don't embarrass us by making a scene. Just eat your dinner. Don't embarrass us." That was it. That was the moment. It wasn't a sudden explosion. It wasn't a scream. It was a click, like a lock snapping shut in my chest. The desire for their approval, the desperate need to be seen, to be loved. It just turned off. I placed my napkin on the table. Carefully. Deliberately. "I'm not hungry," I said. "Sit down, William," my father commanded. His voice had that tone he used on his employees. "We are having a family dinner." "No," I said, standing up. "You are having a family dinner. I'm just the audience. If you walk out that door," my mother warned, her eyes finally locking onto mine, cold and hard, "don't expect a plate to be saved for you." "I don't want your food, Mom," I said. I looked at Lucas, then at Bella. "And I certainly don't want your pity. Enjoy the dry turkey." I turned and walked out. I could hear Lucas laughing behind me. Let him go. He probably has to go reboot a server somewhere. The laughter followed me down the hallway, past the family portraits that I wasn't in, and out the heavy oak front door. I stepped out into the crisp November air. Snow was starting to fall. I took a deep breath, letting the cold fill my lungs. Felt clean. I walked down the long driveway, away from the warm glow of the mansion. At the end of the block, parked in the shadows of a large oak tree, a black sedan was waiting. It wasn't just a car. It was a Phantom, a Rolls-Royce Phantom. The driver's door opened, and Mike, my head of security, stepped out. He was a mountain of a man with a heart of gold. He opened the back door for me. "Rough night, boss?" Mike asked, seeing the look on my face. I slid into the leather interior. It smelled of expensive cedar and success. I pulled out my phone. It was buzzing with texts from my mother, telling me how selfish I was. "Get Sarah on the line," I told Mike. "Sir, it's Thanksgiving," Mike said gently. "She'll answer," I said. 2 rings. Then, a sharp, professional female voice. "William? Everything okay?" "Sarah," I said, leaning back and closing my eyes. "The acquisition of Mercer Holdings. The debt buyout we discussed last month. The distressed asset portfolio?" She clarified. "I thought you said you didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole because of the conflict of interest." "I changed my mind," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "Buy it. Buy all of it. Every loan, every lien, every outstanding credit line. I want to own their debt by Monday morning." There was a pause on the line. Sarah knew me better than anyone. She knew what this meant. "They hurt you, didn't they? They called me intellectually broke, Sarah?" I whispered, watching the snow melt on the window. "Let's see how smart they feel when they're bankrupt." "Consider it done," Sarah said. I hung up. The car glided away into the night. I wasn't the sad little boy leaving the dinner table anymore. I was the shark circling the water, and they had just poured blood into the ocean. The drive back to my penthouse was silent, but my mind was loud. It was replaying 34 years of history. People ask me how I became the secret CEO of Orion Tech, a multi-billion-dollar software empire, while my family thinks I fix printers. The answer is simple: survival. Growing up, there was always Lucas, the golden child. When Lucas got a C in math, my parents hired 3 tutors and blamed the teacher. When I got an A, they asked why I didn't play football like Lucas. I remember my 16th birthday. I had spent all summer mowing lawns to save up for a coding camp. I put the money in a jar on my dresser. One day, the jar was empty. When I asked Mom, she didn't even look up from her magazine. "Lucas needed a new tennis racket, William. He has a tournament. Don't be selfish. We're a family. We share. We share." That was the code word for William gives, Lucas takes. I learned to hide things. My grades. My projects. My money. By the time I was 22, I had developed a piece of compression software in my dorm room. By 25, I sold my first startup. By 30, I founded Orion. I kept it secret because I knew what would happen if they knew. They wouldn't be proud. They would just want a cut. They would demand I hire Lucas. They would drain me dry. I arrived at my building. The doorman, Henry, tipped his hat. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mr. Mercer." "Thanks, Henry," I said, forcing a smile. I took the private elevator to the top floor. The penthouse was expansive, modern, and empty. I poured myself a glass of scotch and stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail from Dad. "William, you embarrassed your mother. Bella thinks you're unstable. I expect a written apology sent to the office on Monday. And fix your attitude. We're doing big things, and we can't have you dragging us down." I deleted the message. Monday morning came with the ruthless efficiency of a guillotine. I was in my office at Orion Tech by 6 a.m. The headquarters was a fortress of glass and steel. My name wasn't on the door. To the public, I was a ghost. My proxy, Arthur Sterling, was the face of the company. A legendary investor I had brought out of retirement. He loved the game and I loved the anonymity. Sarah walked in at 7 a.m. holding a thick file. She looked tired but fierce. Sarah was 55, sharp as a tack, and the only mother figure I truly respected. "Happy Monday," she said, dropping the file on my desk. "Here is the autopsy report on Mercer Holdings." I opened the folder. It was worse than I thought. "They are bleeding cash," Sarah explained, pointing to the red numbers. "Your father has been leveraging company assets to pay for personal loans. The yacht, the vacation homes, the country club memberships. It's all bought on company credit." "And Lucas?" I asked. Sarah flipped to the next page. "Lucas is the real problem. He's listed as the COO, drawing a salary of $400,000 a year. But look at the expense reports." I scanned the lines. Trips to Vegas. Consulting fees paid to shell companies. Jewelry stores. "He's embezzling?" I said, feeling a cold knot in my stomach. "He's stealing from the company. And he's not even good at it," Sarah noted. "He's leaving a paper trail a mile wide. If the IRS looks at this, he's going to jail." "They don't know," I realized. "Dad doesn't know. Mom doesn't know. They think Lucas is a genius businessman. They are about to default on their primary loan," Sarah said. "The bank was going to foreclose next week. But we stepped in. We own the debt," I confirmed. "We own the bank that owns the debt," Sarah corrected with a smirk. "Technically, as of 8 a.m. this morning, you are the primary creditor for Mercer Holdings. You own them, William." I ran my hand over the paper. This wasn't just business. This was an inheritance of a different kind. I wasn't inheriting their money. I was inheriting their failures. "What's the next move?" Sarah asked. "They want a partnership with Orion," I said. "They think a merger will save them. They don't realize the merger is just a cover for a bailout." "Do we grant the meeting?" "Yes," I said, standing up and buttoning my suit jacket. "Set it up for Friday. Tell them the chairman of Orion wants to meet personally to discuss the synergy." "They have no idea the chairman is you," Sarah said. "No," I replied. "They think the chairman is Arthur." "This is going to destroy them, Will," Sarah said softly. "Are you sure?" I looked at the photo on my desk. It was me and my grandfather, the only man who ever told me I was smart. He started Mercer Holdings with a toolbox and a truck. He would roll over in his grave if he saw what my father and brother had done to his legacy. "I'm not destroying them, Sarah," I said. "I'm stopping the bleeding. Sometimes, to save the patient, you have to amputate the limb. Even if the limb is your brother? Especially then." Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Dad. "William," he barked. "No hello. No apology for the intellectually broke comment. I need you to come to the house. Now." "I'm working, Dad," I said, looking at a multimillion-dollar contract on my screen. "Working? Please. Your little computer games can wait. Lucas is overwhelmed with the Orion proposal. The formatting on the documents is all wrong. The printer is jammed. We need someone tech-savvy to fix it." I closed my eyes. They wanted the secret CEO of the company they were pitching to come fix the printer so they could print the pitch. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. "I'll be there in an hour," I said. Why did I go? Because I needed evidence. Sarah's report was good, but I needed the physical proof of Lucas's theft before I dropped the hammer. When I arrived at the estate, the atmosphere was chaotic. Bella was shouting at a caterer on the phone about her upcoming engagement party. Mom was pacing. Dad was red-faced, yelling at a pile of paper. Lucas was sitting on the couch, playing a game on his phone. Finally, Lucas said when I walked in. He didn't look up. "Printers in the study. Make yourself useful, Will. We have a meeting with Orion Tech on Friday. This is the big leagues. Try not to break anything." I walked into the study, my father's office. The smell of old leather and cigars used to intimidate me. Now it just smelled like desperation. I fixed the printer in 30 seconds. It was just out of paper. But I didn't leave. I sat down at Lucas's laptop, which was left open on the desk. "Password," I muttered. Knowing Lucas, it was something stupid. I typed Lucas number 1. Access granted. I went straight to his email, then to his hidden folders. What I found made my blood run cold. It wasn't just embezzlement. It was gambling, online poker, sports betting. He was down nearly $2 million. And he was pulling money from the employee pension fund to cover his losses. "Oh, Lucas," I whispered. "You didn't just steal from Dad. You stole from the workers." Suddenly, the door creaked. I minimized the window instantly. It was Emily, the young intern my father had hired last month. She looked terrified. She was holding a tray of coffee. "Mr. William?" she whispered. "It's okay, Emily," I said. "I'm just fixing the Wi-Fi." She walked over, her hands shaking. She put the coffee down and then reached into her pocket. She pulled out a USB drive. "I know who you are," she said softly. I froze. "Excuse me? I saw you on the cover of Tech Monthly 3 years ago," she said. "You had a beard, but it was you, the founder of Orion." I looked at her. A 20-year-old intern was smarter than my entire family combined. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. "Because I need this job," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "But I can't watch them do this anymore. Lucas, he's forcing me to cook the books. He says if I don't hide the losses, he'll fire me and make sure I never work in this town again." She pressed the USB drive into my hand. "Here is the real ledger, the one he keeps off the server. Please, don't let him get away with it." I closed my hand around the drive. "You won't lose your job, Emily. Promise. In fact, you might be getting a promotion soon." "Hey!" Lucas's voice boomed from the hallway. "Is that printer working yet? I have important people to impress." "Coming," I yelled back. I slipped the drive into my pocket. I had the smoking gun. I walked out to the living room. "Printer works," I said. "And I reformatted your document. You had the margins wrong." "See," Dad said, clapping me on the shoulder hard enough to hurt. "You're useful when you want to be, William. Now run along. We have strategy to discuss, and we don't need you confusing things." Bella looked up from her magazine. "Did you polish your shoes today, William? You look a little less homeless." I stopped at the door. I looked at Bella. "You should enjoy that engagement ring, Bella. Make sure it's real." Her eyes narrowed. "What is that supposed to mean?" "Just friendly advice," I said. "See you all around." I walked out of that house for the last time as William the Fix-It guy. Next time I saw them, I would be the executioner. As I drove away, I called my lawyer. "Start drafting the custody papers for the company assets," I said. "And get the forensic accountants ready. We're going to need them for the employee pension fund restoration." "It's that bad?" the lawyer asked. "It's criminal," I said. "And Friday is Judgment Day." Thursday night was a vigil. I didn't sleep. The city of New York sprawled beneath my floor-to-ceiling windows, a grid of electricity and ambition, but my mind was stuck in a small, dusty garage 30 years ago. That garage was where my grandfather started Mercer Holdings. I remembered the smell of sawdust and grease. I remembered him sitting me on his workbench, his hands rough and stained. "William," he'd said, "a business isn't about money. It's about trust. If people can't trust you, you have nothing." My father had forgotten that. Lucas never learned it. And now, I was the one who had to burn it all down to save the ashes. I paced the length of my penthouse. The silence was heavy. I wasn't just preparing for a business meeting. I was preparing for a funeral. The funeral of my role as the dutiful, invisible son. At 3 a.m., I stopped pacing and went to my closet. It wasn't just a closet. It was a vault. I pushed aside the gray hoodies and worn jeans, the costume I wore around my family, and reached for the back. I pulled out a garment bag. Inside was a charcoal three-piece suit, bespoke, cut on Seville row. The fabric was so dark it seemed to absorb the light. I hung it on the doorframe. This was my armor. When I put this on, William the failure would cease to exist. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, shattering the silence. It was 7 a.m. Mother. I stared at the screen. The name Mom used to bring me a sense of warmth, then guilt. Now it just brought a cold, clinical detachment. I swiped right. "Hello, Mother." "William." Her voice was breathless, nervous. "Listen, I know we usually expect you for Friday leftovers, but, well, plans have changed." I walked to the kitchen, pouring myself a black coffee. "Changed how?" "We're going to be celebrating tonight," she said, her voice pitching up, a telltale sign she was lying or manipulating. "The meeting with Orion Tech is today." Arthur Sterling himself cleared his schedule. "We're going to sign the deal of the century, William. And afterwards, we're going to a very exclusive club with Bella's friends." "And I'm not invited," I said flatly. "It's not that you're not invited," she sighed, the victimhood seeping into her tone. "It's just, you know how you get in crowds. You get moody. You stand in the corner. And Bella, well, she's invited some very high society people. Investors. We need to present a certain image. A successful image." Sarah was waiting in my office. She held the red folder, the kill file, to her chest like a shield. "They're early," she said, her face tight. "They've been in the lobby for 10 minutes. I walked to my desk and turned on the security monitors. "Show me." The screen flickered to life. There they were. My family. My father was wearing a suit that was expensive but ill-fitting, straining at the buttons. He was yelling at the young receptionist, pointing at his watch. "Do you know who I am?" I heard him bark through the audio feed. "I am Robert Mercer. I am here to save your company with a partnership. Get Mr. Sterling down here now." Beside him, Lucas was leaning against the reception desk, looking bored. He was wearing sunglasses indoors. He took a sip of a latte and left the cup on the pristine white counter, ignoring the coaster. Bella was the worst. She was on her phone, pacing back and forth, her voice carrying through the lobby. "I know, right? We're basically buying Orion. Lucas is going to be a legend. I'm already looking at penthouses in Tribeca. No, the big one, with the terrace." I watched them with a cold fascination. They were so small, so loud, so incredibly unaware that they were standing in the belly of the beast they thought they were taming. "They're treating the staff like servants," Sarah murmured, standing behind me. "That's because they think they are kings," I said. "Let them wait. Let them marinate in their own arrogance." I zoomed in on my mother. She was sitting on a bench, checking her makeup in a compact mirror. She looked nervous. She kept smoothing her skirt. Was it guilt? No, it was fear. Fear that the facade would crack. "Sarah," I said, not taking my eyes off the screen, "do we have the forensic accounting report on the pension fund?" "Yes," she said. "Lucas drained it. There's less than $5,000 left. If an employee retires tomorrow, they get nothing." My fist clenched on the desk. That was the line. They could insult me. They could ignore me. But stealing the livelihood of the people who built their company, that was unforgivable. "Send them up," I said. "Boardroom A, the one with the soundproofing." "Are you ready?" Sarah asked. I stood up, buttoning my jacket. I've been ready for 34 years. I walked to the door. Tell Arthur to start without me. Let them think they've won. Let them get comfortable in the seats of power. And then I'll show them who really owns the throne. The hallway to boardroom, it was long, lined with modern art that my father would undoubtedly call pretentious trash. I walked slowly. Every step echoed on the marble, a rhythmic drumbeat of impending doom. I paused outside the double mahogany doors. I could hear voices inside. They were loud, celebratory, premature. "I'm telling you, Dad," Lucas was saying, his voice booming with unearned confidence. "Ideally, we structure this as a merger of equals. We keep 51%. We let Orion handle the back-end grunt work while I focus on the vision." "Vision," I whispered to myself. "Your only vision is a roulette wheel." "I agree," my father's voice chimed in. "We shouldn't sell ourselves short. Orion needs us. They need the Mercer legacy. And the signing bonus," Bella added. "Don't forget the bonus, Lucas. You promised me that trip to the Maldives." "Don't worry, babe. Once Arthur sees these projections, he'll be eating out of my hand." I looked at Sarah. She nodded. She pushed the heavy doors open. The boardroom was magnificent. 3 walls of glass offering a panoramic view of the Hudson River. A table made of black obsidian that stretched for 20 feet. Arthur Sterling stood at the far end, his back to the door, looking out the window. My family was clustered at the near end, sprawling in the leather chairs like they owned the place. Lucas had his feet, his muddy designer loafers, resting on the obsidian table. The sound of the doors opening made them turn. Lucas saw me first. His grin faltered, then twisted into a sneer of disbelief. "William?" He laughed, the sound jarring in the acoustic perfection of the room. "What the hell are you doing here? Did you get lost looking for the service entrance?" Bella covered her mouth, giggling. "Oh my God. Look at him. He's playing dress-up. Did you rent that suit for a funeral, William?" My father stood up, his face flushing a deep, angry crimson. "William, this is the final straw. I told you to stay home. This is a private meeting with billion-dollar investors. Get out before security throws you out." "Actually," I said, my voice calm, cutting through their noise like a razor blade, "I think I'll stay." I walked into the room. I didn't scurry. I didn't hunch. I walked with the stride of a man who owned the building because I did. I walked past my mother, whose mouth was hanging open. I walked past Bella, who looked confused by the quality of my suit. I walked past Lucas, and I deliberately brushed his feet off the table with my hand. "Hey!" Lucas shouted, scrambling to sit up. "Don't touch me, you loser!" I ignored him. I walked to the head of the table, the seat of power, the seat my father had assumed was for Arthur. I stood behind the chair. I looked at Arthur's back. "Arthur," I said softly. Arthur Sterling, the man Wall Street called the Iron Fist, turned around slowly. He looked at my family, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at me. He bowed, deeply, respectfully. "Good morning, Mr. Chairman," Arthur said. "The board is assembled." The silence that followed was violent. It sucked the air out of the room. My father blinked. "Chairman? Arthur, what is this joke?" "That's my son. He fixes printers." Arthur adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Mercer, you seem confused. I am the chief investment officer. I manage the portfolio, but I answer to the board. And the chairman of the board, the founder of Orion Tech, the majority shareholder, is William Mercer." My mother let out a sound like a balloon deflating. She collapsed back into her chair, her hand clutching her pearls. "No," Lucas whispered. He looked from me to Arthur, then back to me. His eyes were wide, frantic. That's bullshit. He's broke. He drives a Honda. He lives in a dump." "I drive a Phantom," I corrected, sitting down in the head chair. "And I live in the penthouse of this building. I just don't invite you there." I leaned forward, clasping my hands on the black table. Hello, Dad. Hello, Lucas. Welcome to my company. You own this? Bella stammered. Her eyes were darting around the room, reevaluating everything. All of this. Every brick, I said. Every server. And as of Monday morning, every debt you have. I signaled to Sarah. She stepped forward and placed the red folder in front of me. I opened it. The sound of the paper turning was the only noise in the room. We're not here to partner with Mercer Holdings, I said, my voice dropping an octave. We're here to execute a foreclosure. Foreclosure, Dad choked out. But the deal, the legacy. There is no legacy. I slammed the folder shut, the crack echoing like a gunshot. There is only theft, gross negligence, and stupidity. I stood up and slid the folder down the table. It stopped perfectly in front of Lucas. Open it, I commanded. Lucas didn't move. He was shaking. Open it, I roared. He opened it with trembling fingers. Photos spilled out. Photos of him at high-stakes poker tables in Vegas. Copies of checks written to shell companies. Invoices for diamond necklaces. What is this? Dad asked, leaning over to look. His face went gray. Lucas, what is this? I can explain, Lucas squeaked. It was an investment strategy. Strategy? I laughed. A cold, humorless sound. You stole $2 million from the company accounts, Lucas. But that's not the worst part. I looked at my father. He drained the employee pension fund, Dad. Old man Jenkins? The guy who worked for Grandpa for 40 years? His retirement is gone. Because Lucas needed to buy a Cartier watch for his fiancée. Bella gasped. She looked down at the diamond bracelet on her wrist. She suddenly looked like she wanted to vomit. You spent the pension money? Dad whispered, horror dawning on him. He looked at his golden child with revulsion for the first time. Lucas, that's prison. Not if we fix it. Lucas screamed, standing up. He pointed a shaking finger at me. William, you have to help us. You're rich. You can pay it back. Just write a check. We're family. Family, I repeated, tasting the bile. Sunday night, I was intellectually broke. I was an embarrassment. I was told to leave the table. Now I'm family. We didn't know. Mom cried, tears streaming down her face. She reached out across the table. William, baby, if we had known you were successful, we would have treated you like a king. We're so proud of you. That, I said, pointing at her, is exactly the problem. You only love success. You don't love me. I took a breath. This was it. The kill shot. Here is the offer, I said. Option A. I hand this folder to the FBI agents waiting in the lobby. Lucas goes to federal prison for embezzlement and fraud. Minimum 10 years. Dad, you get charged as an accomplice for negligence. You lose the house. You lose everything. The room spun. Lucas sobbed, collapsing into his chair. No prison, please. Option B, I continued. You sign over 100% of Mercer Holdings to Orion Tech. Right now. For the price of $1. $1, Dad gasped. $1, I confirmed. I will use my own money to refill the pension fund. I will save the employees. But you get nothing. You retire. You vanish. I looked at Lucas. And you, brother, you go to rehab for your gambling addiction. If you finish the program, I might give you a job. Entry level. Warehouse. Minimum wage. You can start paying back your debt 1 hour at a time. I'm a CEO, Lucas wailed. You are a criminal, I shouted, standing up. And I am the only thing standing between you and a cellmate named Bubba. I turned my gaze to Bella. She was trying to slide her chair back, trying to disappear. And you, I said, the gold digger special. Lucas is broke, Bella. He has nothing. No inheritance. No job. Just debt. Bella stopped moving. Her face hardened. The mask dropped. He's broke. Destitute, I said. She looked at Lucas, who was weeping into his hands. She looked at the ring on her finger. You lying bastard, she hissed at Lucas. She pulled the ring off and threw it at him. It bounced off his forehead. You told me you were a tycoon. You told me we were set for life. Bella, please, Lucas cried. I'm done, she said. She grabbed her purse. She looked at me. William, maybe we could grab coffee sometime? I've always thought smart men were sexy. I looked at her with pure disgust. Get out. She scurried out of the room like a rat fleeing a sinking ship. I looked back at my parents. Well, the pen is right there. Prison or poverty. Choose. My father picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so hard he could barely hold it. He looked at me, searching for any trace of the son he used to bully. He found only a stranger. He signed. The scratch of the pen on paper was the sound of an empire falling. My father signed the deed, surrendering 50 years of history. He slid the paper to Lucas. Lucas couldn't even hold the pen. He was hyperventilating. I can't go to jail, he blubbered. I can't. Then sign, I said coldly. He scribbled his name. It was barely legible. Sarah stepped forward and snatched the documents. The transfer is complete. Mercer Holdings now belongs to Orion Tech. Get out of my building, I said. William. My mother stood up. She wasn't crying anymore. She had switched tactics. She was now the martyr. We'll go. But I just want you to know. I did everything for you. I protected you. I laughed. It was a dark, bitter sound. Protected me? From what? Success. I kept you humble, she insisted. Lucas. Lucas needed the spotlight. He was fragile. You were always so strong, William. I knew you could handle the neglect. I knew you didn't need us. That is a lie, I said. You didn't think I was strong. You thought I was useless. No, she protested. I knew you were brilliant. That's why I hid the letter. The room froze. Even Lucas stopped crying. What letter? I asked, my voice dangerously low. My mother's eyes widened. She realized she had slipped. She covered her mouth. What letter, Mother? I stepped closer to her. The acceptance letter, she whispered, looking down at the floor. From MIT. I felt the blood drain from my face. MIT? When you were 18, she mumbled. A letter came. Full scholarship. Early acceptance. I grabbed the edge of the table. The room swayed. I never applied to MIT. I thought I wasn't good enough. You did apply, she said. I found the application in your trash and mailed it. I wanted to see if you could get in. And when you did, I threw the acceptance letter away. Why? I screamed. It was the first time I had raised my voice to a scream. Why would you do that? Because if you left, who would fix the house? She cried out. Who would do my taxes? Who would help Lucas with his homework? We needed you here. You were the glue, William. Lucas would have fallen apart without you to clean up his messes. I stared at her. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. She hadn't neglected me because she didn't love me. She had sabotaged me because she used me. I wasn't a son. I was a utility, a tool. You stole my life, I whispered. You stole my education. You let me believe for 20 years that I was stupid, that I was rejected. I did it for the family, she shrieked. You did it for yourself, I said. And now you have neither. I pressed the intercom button. Security. Remove them. The doors burst open. Mike and 3 other guards marched in. They weren't gentle this time. Mr. Mercer, please come with us, Mike said, grabbing my father's arm. Get your hands off me, Dad shouted, trying to maintain some dignity. I am Robert Mercer. You are a trespasser, Mike said, dragging him toward the door. Lucas was practically carried out, his legs dragging on the carpet, sobbing about his Ferrari. My mother paused at the door. She looked back at me. William, please. Where will we go? We have no money. You have each other, I said. Isn't that what you always told me? We're family. We share. Go share your misery. The doors closed. I stood there for a long time. The silence in the room was absolute. Arthur Sterling walked over to the sidebar and poured a glass of amber liquid. He brought it to me. Scotch, he said. 30 years old. Older than your brother. I took the glass. My hand was shaking slightly. Did you hear that? About MIT. I heard, Arthur said quietly. She clipped your wings because she was afraid you'd fly away. But she failed, William. You flew anyway. You just built your own wings. I downed the scotch in one burn. It's over. Not quite, Arthur said. We have a company to strip. Do it? I said, my voice hardening. Liquidate the assets. Sell the mansion. Sell the cars. Sell the jewelry. Put every cent into the pension fund. I want those employees made whole by Friday. And the Mercer Holdings brand? Burn it, I said. Dissolve the corporation. Fire the executive board. But the staff, the regular workers, keep them. Bring them into the Orion fold. Give them a 20% raise and tell them they work for a CEO who actually knows their names. Consider it done, Arthur said. He squeezed my shoulder. You did good, kid. Arthur left to execute the orders. I was alone in the boardroom. I walked to the window. The snow was falling harder now, blanketing the city in white. Down below on the sidewalk, I saw a small commotion. I saw my father arguing with a taxi driver. I saw my mother sitting on the curb, weeping into her fur coat. I saw Lucas sitting on the ground, hugging his knees. And I saw Bella, standing a few feet away, furiously typing on her phone, probably looking for her next victim. They looked like strangers. I waited for the guilt to hit me. I waited for the ingrained programming of be a good son to kick in. But it didn't. Instead, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was lightness, the heavy cloak of their expectations, their insults, their needs. It was gone. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. Emily is in the lobby. She brought the backup drives. She's asking if she still has a job. I smiled. A real smile. Send her up? I typed back. And tell her to bring her resume. I think we need a new VP of operations. I put the phone in my pocket. I turned away from the window, turning my back on the people on the sidewalk. I looked at the empty boardroom. It wasn't empty. It was full of potential. I walked toward the door. I had a meeting with my new team. I had a pension fund to restore. I had an empire to run. William, the intellectually broke brother, was dead. Long live William, the CEO. 6 months. That is how long it takes to turn a sinking ship into a rocket, provided you throw the dead weight overboard. I stood in what used to be my father's office at Mercer Holdings. The smell of stale cigar smoke and old desperation was gone, replaced by the crisp scent of fresh paint and ambition. The heavy, dark oak paneling had been ripped out, replaced by glass walls that let the light flood in. We didn't call it Mercer Holdings anymore. That name was buried in a shallow grave along with its reputation. We renamed the subsidiary Phoenix Systems. A bit cliché? Maybe, but it felt appropriate. We rose from the ashes of my family's greed. Emily walked in. The terrified intern who used to bring coffee with shaking hands was now my director of operations. She wasn't wearing an oversized hoodie to hide herself anymore. She wore a tailored blazer, and she walked with a purpose. Mr. Mercer, she said, tapping her tablet. The quarterly projections are in. We're up 40%. And the employee pension fund is fully soluble. In fact, with the market gains, we're paying out a bonus to the retirees next month. Good work, Emily, I said, signing a document. And stop calling me Mr. Mercer. It makes me feel like my father. Call me William. Old habits, William, she smiled. Oh, and security reported a situation in the lobby earlier. I paused. My pen hovered over the paper. Let me guess. A woman in a fur coat she can no longer afford. She was trying to get up to see you, Emily said softly. She said she's your mother. She brought a Tupperware container. She said it was lasagna. I walked to the window. I looked down at the busy street. I couldn't see her, but I could picture it. My mother, Eleanor, using a casserole as a Trojan horse to re-infiltrate my life. She didn't want to feed me. She wanted to feed off me. What did security do? I asked. They followed protocol, Emily said. They told her you were in a meeting and couldn't be disturbed. She waited for an hour. Then she left. Good, I said. The old William would have felt a pang of guilt. The old William would have thought maybe she's sorry. Maybe she just wants to be a mom. But the new William knew better. You don't invite the vampire back into the house just because they knock politely. Also, Emily hesitated. Sarah sent the report on the warehouse staff. I turned around. Show me. She pulled up a video file on her tablet. It was grainy security footage from one of our distribution centers in New Jersey. There he was. Lucas, my brother, the golden child, the boy who used to complain if his steak wasn't cooked medium rare, was wearing a neon orange vest. He was lifting heavy boxes onto a conveyor belt. He looked thinner. His hair wasn't styled. He looked tired. He's been on time every day for 3 months, Emily reported. His supervisor says he keeps his head down, doesn't talk much, eats lunch alone in his car, a 10-year-old Toyota. I watched the screen. I saw Lucas wipe sweat from his forehead with the back of his glove. He didn't look happy, but for the first time in his life, he looked like a man earning his existence. Keep him there, I said. If he misses a shift, he's fired. If he steals a paperclip, he's fired. But as long as he works, he gets a paycheck. Same as everyone else. Understood, Emily said. She took the tablet back. You're a better man than I am, William. I would have let him rot. He is rotting, I said. The old Lucas is rotting away. Maybe something human will grow in his place. Maybe not. It's not my job to save him anymore. It's just my job to be fair. That evening, I left the office early. I had a dinner date. Not a romantic one, though my DMs were flooded with requests since Forbes ran a profile on the secret billionaire. I drove the Phantom to a small, unassuming diner in Queens. I walked in, and the smell of frying bacon hit me like a warm hug. Sitting in a booth in the back was an elderly woman with gray hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was wearing a sweater that had seen better days. Aunt Clara, I said, sliding into the booth opposite her. She looked up, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Clara was my mother's older sister, the black sheep of her side of the family because she married a mechanic and lived a simple life. My mother used to mock her. Poor Clara, Mom would say. She has no ambition. William, Clara said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Her hands were rough, calloused from years of gardening. Look at you. You look light. I feel light, Auntie, I said. The waitress came over and we ordered burgers and fries. No caviar, no champagne, just real food. I heard about what happened, Clara said quietly after the waitress left. Your mother called me, screaming, crying, said you stole the company, said you threw your own father out on the street. I didn't throw them on the street, I corrected. I moved them into a 2-bedroom condo in Jersey City. I paid the rent for a year. After that, they're on their own. It's more than they deserve. Clara nodded slowly. She took a sip of her iced tea. I wanted to call you, William, for years. When you were a boy, I saw how they treated you. I saw Robert belittling you. I saw Eleanor ignoring you while she fawned over Lucas. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. It wasn't an accusation, just a question I needed answered. I tried, she said, her eyes filling with tears. I told Eleanor she was damaging you. She told me I was jealous. She told me if I ever criticized her parenting again, she'd cut me off from seeing you entirely. And I was a coward, William. I wanted to be there, even if it was just once a year at Christmas, to make sure you were okay. I looked at this woman. She had practically no money, yet she used to slip me $20 every birthday when Mom wasn't looking. She was the only one who ever asked me about my books, about my code. You weren't a coward, I said. You were a hostage, just like me. I brought you something, she said. She reached into her oversized purse and pulled out a small, wrapped box. I opened it. Inside was an old, tarnished pocket watch. It was your grandfather's, she said. Dad gave it to Robert, but Robert threw it in a drawer and forgot about it because it wasn't a Rolex. I stole it back years ago. I kept it for you. He would have wanted you to have it. You're the only one who has his heart. I ran my thumb over the engraved metal. I felt a lump in my throat. This was my inheritance. Not the company, not the money. Thank you, Aunt Clara, I whispered. You did the right thing, William, she said firmly. Don't let them guilt you. You cut out the cancer. Now you have to heal the wound. We sat there for 2 hours, talking about everything and nothing. I realized then that I did have a family. It was just small. It was Aunt Clara. It was Sarah. It was Emily. It was the people who sat with me when I had nothing to offer but myself. As I drove home that night, I passed by the high-end district where Bella used to shop. I had heard through the grapevine, which meant Sarah's ruthless investigative skills, about Bella's fate. After I exposed her gold digging at the board meeting, she tried to latch onto another wealthy bachelor. But the circle of high society New York is small, and gossip travels faster than light. Everyone knew she had abandoned her fiancé the moment he went broke. She was branded radioactive. Last I heard, she had moved to LA, trying to become an influencer, selling diet tea on Instagram to a few thousand bots. She was chasing an illusion of relevance that would never come. I pulled up to my building. The doorman opened the door. Good evening, Mr. Mercer. A letter came for you. Hand-delivered. He handed me a cream-colored envelope. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my father's calligraphy, ostentatious and shaky. I took it up to the penthouse. I sat on the sofa, the city lights glittering behind me. I held the letter. Part of me wanted to burn it. Part of me needed to read it. I tore it open. William, I am writing this from the kitchen table of the shoebox apartment you put us in. The heating is loud. The neighbors are noisy. It is humiliating. Your mother is in the bedroom. She doesn't get out of bed much these days. She just watches old home videos of Lucas playing football. I wanted to tell you that you made a mistake. You think you won, but you lost the most important thing. Loyalty. A son does not destroy his father. A son respects his heritage. However, I saw the stock price of Phoenix Systems today. It's higher than it ever was under my command. I suppose you are good at computers. Maybe if you had shown this kind of aggression earlier, I would have respected you more. If you ever decide to stop this tantrum, we are here. We are willing to forgive you. Dad, I read it twice. Willing to forgive me? I laughed aloud to the empty room. The arrogance was terminal. Even in defeat, even living on my charity, he believed he was the one offering forgiveness. He still thought my success was a tantrum. He still couldn't see me. He only saw the stock price. I stood up and walked to the fireplace. I didn't have a wood fire burning, just a modern gas flame. I held the letter to the fire. I watched the cream paper curl and blacken. I watched my father's handwriting turn to ash. I forgive you, Dad, I whispered to the flames. I forgive you for being too weak to love a son you couldn't control. I let the ash fall into the grate. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah. Don't forget. Tomorrow is the launch. The press will be there. Are you ready to tell the world? I looked at my reflection in the window. The man staring back wasn't the scared boy from the dinner table. He wasn't the vengeful CEO from the boardroom. He was something new. I'm ready, I typed back. The flashbulbs were blinding. I stood at the podium in the center of the Great Hall of the New York Public Library. It was crowded. Reporters, industry titans, politicians, they were all there. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at the front row. Sitting there was Aunt Clara, wearing a new dress I had bought her, looking terrified but proud. Next to her was Sarah, checking her watch, ever the general. Next to her was Emily, beaming. And next to Emily was a group of 20 teenagers. They were diverse, from all backgrounds, but they all had one thing in common. They looked uncomfortable in their nice clothes. They looked around the room like they didn't belong. They had that look in their eyes, the look of being invisible. I tapped the microphone. The room quieted. "Thank you all for coming," I began. My voice echoed through the hall. 6 months ago, I was told by my own family that I was intellectually broke. I was told that because I didn't fit their mold of success, I had no value. I paused. I saw a few reporters scribbling furiously. "We live in a world that loves the golden child," I continued. "We celebrate the loud ones, the ones who fit in, the ones who follow the path. But what about the others? What about the quiet ones? The ones who tinker in garages? The ones who read books in the corner at parties? The ones who are told they are too sensitive or too weird?" I looked directly at the group of teenagers in the front row. "This is for you." The banner behind me dropped. The Mercer Foundation, investing in the invisible. "Today, I am launching a new initiative," I announced. "A $500 million scholarship and incubator fund. We aren't looking for the captain of the football team. We aren't looking for the class president. We are looking for the outcasts, the black sheep, the kids whose parents don't understand them, the kids who have been told they aren't enough." Applause rippled through the room, polite at first, then thunderous. "We will provide full tuition," I said, raising my voice over the clapping. "We will provide mentorship. But most importantly, we will provide a family. A family that chooses you based on your mind and your heart, not your utility." I stepped down from the podium. I walked straight to the kids. I shook their hands. I saw myself in every single one of them. One boy, maybe 16, holding a worn-out backpack, looked up at me. "Is it true?" he asked quietly. "Did your family really fire you from dinner?" "They did," I smiled. "And it was the best meal I never ate." The event wound down hours later. I was exhausted but exhilarated. As I was leaving the library, walking down those iconic stone steps, a man stepped out from the shadows of the pillars. It was Lucas. I stopped. Mike, my security guard, stepped forward instantly, his hand moving to his holster. I waved him off. "It's okay, Mike," I said. Lucas looked older. He was wearing cheap jeans and a jacket that looked like it came from a thrift store. His hands were rough. He looked like a man who knew the price of a gallon of milk. "I saw it on the news," Lucas said. His voice was hoarse. "The foundation." "Hello, Lucas," I said. "You named it Mercer," he said. "It was Grandpa's name too," I replied. "I'm trying to clean it up." Lucas nodded. He looked at his boots. "I'm working at the fulfillment center. Zone 4. Packing." "I know," I said. "Your metrics are good. You're in the top 10% for efficiency." He let out a short, dry laugh. "Yeah, turns out I'm good at Tetris. Packing boxes is just 3D Tetris." He looked up at me. There was no arrogance left in his eyes, just a deep, aching regret. "Mom is not good," he said. "She just stares at the wall. Dad is trying to sell life insurance over the phone. It's pathetic." "It's consequences," I said simply. "I know," Lucas whispered. He took a step closer, but not threateningly. "I just wanted to say, you were right about everything. I was a leech. I thought I was the king because they told me I was. But I was nothing without you fixing my mistakes." I listened. I waited for the but. "But can I have money? But can I have my job back?" "That's it," Lucas said. "I just wanted to tell you that. I'm sorry, Will. For the dinner. For the MIT letter. For everything." He turned to walk away. "Lucas," I called out. He stopped, turning back, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "Keep working," I said. 6 months. If you stay clean, if you keep your metrics up. Apply for the manager training program. Don't use my name. Apply like everyone else. If you earn it, you'll get it." Lucas stared at me. He swallowed hard. He nodded. "I will. Thanks, Will." He walked away, disappearing into the New York night. He walked to the subway station, not a limo. I watched him go. I didn't offer him a ride. He had to walk his own path. We all do. I walked to my car. Sarah was waiting. "Ready to go home, boss?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "Let's drive. Just drive." We drove through the city. I watched the lights blur past. I thought about the audience listening to this story right now. I thought about you. Maybe you're sitting at a dinner table right now, feeling invisible. Maybe you have a brother who gets all the praise while you do all the work. Maybe you have parents who clipped your wings because they were afraid of your height. I want you to know something. They don't get to write your story. They don't get to decide your worth. You might feel intellectually broke or emotionally bankrupt because that's what they told you. But you are not a bank account for them to withdraw from. You are a venture capital fund waiting for the right investment. Invest in yourself. Walk away from the table where love is served with conditions. Build your own table. It took me 34 years to realize that the only person I needed to impress was the man in the mirror. I looked at my reflection in the car window. The city lights danced in my eyes. I am William Mercer. Thank you for listening.